All right, Joe, it's been a minute, but we are back with the Cost of a Dream podcast presented by Average is Failure. Um, yeah, so we're just going to chop it up a little bit today. We've been playing around with thoughts about segments and stuff like that for whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening, through a podcast app or what have you. But we part of the reality, Joe always reminds me of this, is that things don't always go as clean as you would like it to. And so, yeah, we've been going for a while. We're just switching things. Probably this isn't even probably going to be uploaded to the in terms of the YouTube stuff, is probably not even going to be uploaded to the same YouTube channel that we were uploading to, because we're just figuring stuff out.
Right.
Um, but that's okay. You know, that's okay. And I hope that that gives you all permission who's listening and to know that everything doesn't have to operate. It is nice if you can get things to be as streamlined as possible, but there are times when things just aren't going to be that nice and neat. But if you still value it, you find ways to do it, and you never know what could happen in the future. So we're fitting this in where we can get it in, and we are just going to see kind of where the conversation takes us. We do have some planned things that we do want to discuss. So one of the things that I so happen to be wearing one of our new designs. I'm about to drop. Well, it's not a new design; it's an old design, but this is one of the new colorways I'll eventually release for the Cost of a Dream, fitting that we're recording today as well. But this isn't even the colorway that I'm about to launch soon. There's a different colorway, so anybody watching, stay tuned. I call it the South Beach, Miami South Beach colorway is about to drop. So stay tuned for that. But I kind of wanted to start us off with just a I wanted to start us off with just a quick thought, and I'm going to try to throw these in there. I've been saying a lot of times, Coach Vaughn is back, really. And I had stepped away from my Coach Vaughn uh uh I don't know what to call it.
But your moniker?
My moniker, for a while. But a lot of people have just continuously said, like, man, you can't really, average is failure. Everything that I'm really doing, it's all connected. And so one of those pieces was always the Coach Vaughn. Even Eric Thomas, who even though he's known me before he became, or I knew him before he became, the Eric Thomas that he is today. Once I started trying to do some of this kind of work as well and started calling myself Coach Vaughn, anytime like I would see him in person, he'd refer to me as Coach Vaughn. So it was just funny that, like, even somebody who knows you from before, there must be something that was catchy about it, or kind of just like compelling about it, that it stuck in people's brains. And sometimes we go away from those things, not realizing that it works.
Right.
It works. And so why go away from it if it's working? So anyway,
Yeah.
I think
Once a
that
coach, always a coach.
once a coach, always a coach, and it just fits so many things. I came up with that name because at the time I was coaching track and field in a very real way. But then I was like, oh, but I'm trying to also coach people in some way, shape, or form to greater success in their lives. So it was just like, yeah, you know, let's get back to that a little bit.
Hmm.
So that being the case, I want to kind of start with, like, I don't know the name of this segment. Right now I'm calling it like the coach's corner, but I'll probably eventually, hopefully, something better will come up. That's a little cheesy. I'll figure something out. I wanted to start today with not even necessarily a conversation. I want to share a quick thought. And it came up in a conversation I was having with my boy Gene Kelly Innocent last night. And one of the things that he said, he said it, and it was so profound. And I wanted to share it. But he was like, yo, listen, we had a big conversation, but part of it led us to this point right here, that if you have to rush to get to something, and we're specifically talking about, like, whatever our goal is, whatever our dream is, um, whatever it is that we're hoping for. If you have to rush to get to it, if you have to, um, if you have to become something that you're not to get to it. And when we say something that you're not, we're not talking about growing into, who you are that you have not kind of attained to yet. But um we're talking about having to go against your principles or something like that in order to get it. Then beware, because it's counterfeit. And he basically was like, um sometimes the success that we're chasing is a counterfeit success, and it looks nice, it looks great, we're looking at somebody else get to it, and sometimes it could even be a good thing, but it's counterfeit for you.
Hmm.
And I think that that was important, man, because we chase so many things that look good. For so long, I wanted to be the next Eric Thomas, right? And it took me years to realize I have to, there are principles, there are things that I can learn from Eric Thomas, but for me to try to become just like Eric Thomas is counterfeit, because I'm not him. How I deliver things is not the same way. The angles that I approach things from aren't the same. And my life's journey is not the same. My story is not the same. Who I've been put around is not the same. And currently the platform that I have, is not the same. And I just want whoever's listening to this, the two or three people that might listen over the course of the next 10 years to this. I don't want them to get caught up in wasting time chasing a counterfeit. Even if doing this is something that you want to do, something similar to this, figure it out, but do it in the way that you're called to do it, the way that God has kind of designed you to do it. Eric Thomas is high energy. I'm
Hmm.
usually cool, calm, and collected. And it I have to force it if I'm gonna be like high energy. And then I
Right.
feel like I'm not being who I am. And the crazy thing about it, Joe, and then I'll kind of land this plane, is that when I'm not being who I am, it actually becomes harder to deliver what I'm trying to deliver, because I'm overthinking it. I'm
Hmm.
Instead of just giving the information as naturally who I am, I'm here trying to think of, like, in my head, I'm simultaneously trying to say, how would Eric deliver it?
Right.
Is this going to be compelling? Are people going to like this delivery? I'm Since Jelp has called me a middle-aged man now, I think part of having the time to reflect as a middle-aged man, you kind of just get comfortable saying, yo, like, I have to do this being me, and I'm not trying to impress anybody. And who it's for, it will be for.
Right.
But if I have to put on for you to get the message, then that probably means that I'm not the one that should be delivering that message to you.
Right.
And that's my thought on that for today. Feel free, Jelp, to jump in there if you have anything you want to add,
Um,
etc.
yeah, I got a little bit to add to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the challenges that people have is that, so we do like to have mentors to look up to emulate and to gain, their experience or wisdoms to help us along the way. Um, but I think, like you're saying, you don't have to be a copycat of your mentor or
Mm-hmm.
those people that you look up to. You take the information and you process it and you use it to benefit yourself, your strengths, improve your challenges and weaknesses, um, but still figure out a way to be authentically you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of motivation, especially when it comes to motivational speaking, it seems that there has to be this level of energy of excitement that you see the big known people have. But like you say, you have a different way of delivering your information.
Mhm, mhm,
It might not be, not to say it's not exciting, but it might not look as excitable. It might not have the
mhm.
loud tone to it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have an effectiveness to the
Yeah.
crowd that you're trying to reach. Um, and I think sometimes, getting caught up in the trend, and knowing that, you know what, maybe I just have a niche here, and that's where I'm going to thrive at.
Hmm.
Um, yes, a lot of people want to reach you want to reach as many people as you can, and that's understandable. And a lot of ways to do that is what being loud. But again, knowing who you are, there's going to be times when you're probably going to be a little bit more loud and more excitable, but for the most part, you're going to be that calm person that's going to
Hmm.
deliver that message. And there's a group of people that need it in that format,
Yeah.
and we have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And matter of fact, one of the people that there's this Christian older white guy named Bob Goff,
Hmm.
and I recently got put on to kind of his work, and he's become somewhat of a influencer by accident because it was never his goal to do that. But what he talked about was just his whole thing is just about, loving, taking up the challenge to love everybody how God has called us to love everyone, right?
Hmm.
And he's literally trying to put that in action, even if he only encounters someone for 5 minutes, and we'll never see them again. But how can he be loving to them in that moment? But what I took from him is one of the things that he talked about in terms of how he approaches life. He was like, hey, sometimes maybe you don't have to yell everything out, right? But he was like, what if he says he tries to take things and think about, hey, if I was just if I just wanted to whisper something to someone, this, like, hey, this is something that might be helpful. And him saying that was so helpful to me because I was like, yeah, you know what, that takes a lot of pressure of performance off, right? When you just think about just, hey, you know what? I don't got to be out there shouting something loud from a stage, or at least even if I'm on a stage, it doesn't have to be me like pretend, even trying to speak to that many people. But can I just think of myself as just whispering something to one person, like, hey, yo, like, I see you heading down this route right here, or I see you trying to do this thing over here. But this might be a different approach that you could take that might be helpful for you.
Hmm.
And man, it was just so freeing to hear that can be a legitimate approach to how I do the work that I want to do. And so I just share that in hopes that that will also liberate somebody who's listening to this who thinks that like they have to do it just like how they see it out there. You don't. You don't. Your way that you might do things can be just as valid and just as needed, as Jelp said. So yeah, coach's corner for today, man. I know that there's a couple of other, I guess I'm gonna have to work on my transitions like all these other folks do. But again, I ain't putting that pressure on myself. So um there's a couple of other things that we want to talk about, I know. And now that I think about it, maybe we'll just do, there's, Kanye and Kyrie have been in the news a lot lately. And then there's also um the gentleman from the Migos
Yes.
who lost his life this week. And so, Joe, man, is there any, assuming that, people know what's been going on? Well, maybe we should fill folks in real quick,
Yes.
just like really quickly. What has been the conversation around Kanye West and Kyrie Irving?
So
Word.
for the Kanye West and Kyrie Irving conversation, is the main, I guess, media, I guess, push is the anti-Semitic comments,
Mm-hmm.
or even the thought of somebody being anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for Kanye, um, he was more direct than Kyrie. Um, Kanye has obviously been on a kind of a tour, um, to kind of talk about his theology and just kind of his life and how he wants to impact the world and kind of the injustices that he see,
Mm-hmm.
and I think what he plans to do to correct those injustices.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Kyrie, um, pretty much he just retweeted a link, I believe, to a documentary or something that was on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And the individuals who kind of saw the, I guess the tweet was like, well, this documentary has some anti-Semitic content in it.
Mm.
And if you're retweeting it, you must support that.
Mhm.
Um, and the first thing that comes to mind is that, you know what, a lot of people really don't know what anti-Semitic, I don't even know how to say it at
It's
times.
anti-Semitism,
Anti-Semitism,
I
yeah,
think.
is at times, yeah. Um, and what is the definition that we all can collectively agree upon
Mhm.
as a society?
Mhm.
And then also too is talking about a truth or a version of truth that doesn't put a group of people in a good light negative.
Mm. Mhm.
And that's where I think we have this issue where, as African American individuals, blacks, however we defined ourselves, um, we're sometimes put in a interesting box where, you know, we're not able to have truthful conversations about our experiences
Mhm.
in regards to other nationalities, cultures, and things of that nature.
Mm.
Um, and I believe, again, since we're in a power structure or an economy that is dominated by other races, they use the economic resources to kind of cut us off from
Mhm.
having that conversation at
Mhm.
times. As
Mhm.
you can see for Kanye West, a lot of the deals that he had with the
Mhm.
companies were, those contracts, those deals were kind of, halted.
Mhm.
In regards to Kyrie, he recently was suspended for
Mhm.
5 games
Mhm.
because even when he tried to talk about, his point of view and that he did not have any hate towards any groups,
Mhm.
they wanted him to say something specific in which he did not at that particular time.
Mhm.
Um, so it kind of just shows that, yes, we live in a country where you do have freedom of speech.
Mhm.
And what that means is that supposedly the government cannot retaliate against you when you
Mhm.
say certain things, but you're not free of consequences. And the
Mm.
truth of the matter is that, anything that we say can be used against us.
Mhm.
Um, we all have microphones, phones, and we
Mhm.
can post information, talk about our experiences, we can talk about our points of views. And just like the situations where there might be white individuals who do things that are racist, and
Mhm.
then as a collective black people will join together, and we will put that information out. And guess what happens a lot of the time? Those individuals are fired from their jobs, lose sponsorships, things of that nature. It happens both ways on all
Yeah.
sides. And I think we have to be aware of that. Um, Now, the thing is that what is anti-Semitic?
Mhm.
And again, is there a conversation? Is there a dialogue to be had about how people might feel oppressed by other cultures
Mhm.
and how to move forward and how to, I guess, make it a more even playing field if that's even possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think and I think one of the takeaways that I have from the situation, this comes to mind for me, is I think we have to be careful. And part of our living well, if we call it that, success, excellence, greatness, whatever we might call it. One, yes, I think we do need to speak to the issues that we believe in, right? That's a part of you being able to bring your whole self to the forefront. I think the challenge that I see in all of this is, one, at least on the Kanye side, right? And this is not, I'm not trying to judge Kanye or anything like that, but the sense that I get, right, is for some reason he feels like he has to be the authority on all things. And I'm just like, listen, And this isn't like, when people are like, hey, like, shut up and dribble or what have you,
Right.
to athletes or what have you. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is athletes can speak on things, but even a LeBron James kind of knows, like, hey, listen, I'm speaking because I'm giving you my thought. I'm not necessarily saying that or trying to position myself as the authority, though, right? I'm simply using my platform to address some things. I think where Kanye sometimes, um, well, I'll admit I do have some. I'm challenged a bit by his theology or what have you, but that also goes back to, I know you're trying to talk about all of these things, but have you done the work that theologians have done at high levels so that when they speak on a particular thing, it is with a level where you can see that they understand the complexities of the issues, right? And they're even able to speak to those complexities, and navigate, around being offensive because they really have understood it, at a level of depth that shows that I think there's a level of just, again, being careful not to try to be the authority on everything. Use your platform to as a way to give those who should be the authority on something more
Right.
voice to that thing, you
Right.
know. um and I think that's one of the challenges that he has. And I also just think that, listen, in a very real way, I think he's flipped the script on, us as a people to some extent, because I do think that some of the things that he says are, it's just insensitive
Hmm.
to his own people.
Hmm.
Some of the things that he tries to equate. Listen, that White Lives Matter shirt, it's that's very hard to, or speaking up and saying, white men, white, what they call, what's it called, cisgendered
Hmm.
men, I think, are almost making it seem as if they are being oppressed.
Right.
um and by all means, it's not to say that I'm sure that some things that they're experiencing now is challenging, it's different than what they've experienced. But I think we have to be careful not to equate, the challengeness of what they're experiencing now to the oppression of what actual oppressed people have experienced. But I also think we're at a point in time where Tim Keller talks about this, where we have to figure out as a society, what does forgiveness and reconciliation look like large scale? Because it, everything has turned into, and to some extent, right, I don't want to say rightfully so, but I think this is just a natural progression of where we're at as a society. It's everything has turned into a shouting match.
Yes.
And I think there's the challenge, especially for those of us who profess to know Jesus Christ. I think the challenge is, how do you forgive when you've experienced some really serious wrongs?
Hmm.
And then on the flip side is, and not to say that we have, black people haven't been forgiven. Black people have been very forgiving and willing to work with those who they've been oppressed by. I think we've
Right.
shown that, right? There's still levels that I think we're gonna have to figure out how to get to. But then on the flip side, it's, hey, how do you figure out how to really right the wrongs that you've done, against a group of people? um you
Are you
know
saying
and
reparations? No, I'm just joking.
no, in a very real way. I think black people, I think the gospel is very challenging, because the gospel almost has to says, like, if you don't get reparations from your brother, how do you still love your brother?
Hmm.
But then on the flip side, it says you wronged your brother, and how do you have to take up the challenge, even if your brother, it says, hey, it's all good, like, I don't need you to give me reparations. How do you say to yourself, nah, you know what, I need to do what I can to repair what I broke?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
And
definitely.
so every side, kind of is challenged by the gospel in their own way. um And so, yeah, there's a lot of figuring out that we have to do as far as that. Quickly, I know we only have about 3 minutes left, but thoughts on the gentleman I think
Take off.
Takeoff, right, from
Migos.
Migos, passed away earlier this week. Any thoughts on that we can learn from as we are trying to work toward our dream, whether that's individually or collectively as a people?
Um, yeah, there's always something to take away, and I think in the moment, sometimes these conversations can seem insensitive about what can you take away and how you should move and things of that nature. Because obviously, Migos is a famous rap group. Quavo and Takeoff are actually Quavo is the uncle, Takeoff is the nephew.
Mm,
Um, they're not. They were at the time a group by themselves because their other member Offset, they had some conflict with him. Um, I'm not a Migos historian.
mhm,
I don't profess to know their music like that. I'm just aware enough to know because they did play a prominent part during a time period. And they were like one of the few rap groups that was really like, very popular. Um, the thing to take away is, you know, obviously being aware of your surroundings. Um, and also, how do you, when you elevate economically or just even mentally, um, how do you detach yourself from activities that might not be beneficial to what you do or where you see yourself going
mhm,
to? Um, Supposedly they were at a bowling alley for a birthday party, I believe, and it seems as if Quavo was playing dice with a group of guys. There was a altercation, and then shots were fired. Takeoff was not even a part of the dice game. He was a bystander and was shot and killed. Um, they say that Takeoff was the one of the quietest ones, the more, I guess, meek and gentle
mhm,
individual out of the group. And it's just sad because even having those characteristics, it doesn't negate or it doesn't give you any shelter when things like that happen.
mhm.
But being in that situation,
We got
and
about 45
I
seconds.
see, um, being in that situation, um, it it puts you in jeopardy. Uh,
Mhm,
and it's sad because I think we've all probably known someone who was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
mhm,
And they were the innocent individual, but they were affected by other people's decisions that are around them.
mhm,
So, learning your surroundings, watching the company that you keep
mhm.
is very important because they say the people that you assimilate with are a reflection of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And we'll leave it at that. Y'all, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch y'all on the next episode next week. Average is failure.